So I recently had to deal with something no parent should ever experience. My autistic son, playing quietly in our own driveway, had two police officers closing in on him like he was armed. And the reason, a toy car. The lights hit my house first, blue, then red, then white again, strobing across my living room window like a warning. It was 5:42 p.m. on a school night. My son Josh was sitting on the curb in zip ties. His shoes were off. His RC car lay face down on the driveway, a front wheel still spinning. Across the street, Karen stood with her arms folded, her phone raised like she was live streaming a war crime. And me, I stepped out of my house in sweatpants and a t-shirt that said, "Best dad, worst morning hair." I still had a mug in my hand, steam rising like nothing in the world was wrong, but everything was wrong. I looked at the shorter officer and asked calmly, "Can you tell me what law my son just broke?" He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. Because 72 hours earlier, none of this had happened yet. It started 3 days before with a high-pitched whir and a sound I hadn't heard in weeks, Josh laughing. My 14-year-old son, who usually kept to himself, was racing his latest creation down our driveway, the Beast 2. Sleek, custom-built, lightning fast. He had printed the frame on a 3D printer, soldered the wiring by hand, coded the controller from scratch. No help, no YouTube tutorials, just trial, error, and pure obsession. Torque calibration, 87%. Better, he muttered to himself, as the car whipped a clean loop around the mailbox. Josh didn't do crowds, he didn't do noise. But when he was building something, he came alive, and for once he wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. I sat on the porch, drinking coffee, watching him the way only dads do when they realize their kid is better at something than they ever were. And that's when she showed up. Karen, Forest Glen Estate's unofficial warden, a walking cliché with a visor, a clipboard, and an expression permanently set to, "I found a violation." She crossed the street like she had a quota to hit. Her polo shirt was tucked in too tight, her eyes fixed on my son's creation like it was trespassing. Josh didn't notice her. He was mid-lap, focused, glowing, but I noticed. Karen stopped, planted her feet, and raised her voice. "Excuse me," she called. Josh didn't look up. I did. "What exactly is that?" she asked, pointing to the RC car like it had fangs. "That's a high-performance electric RC vehicle," I said. "My son built it himself." Her eyebrow arched. "It's on the sidewalk." "He's testing it." "It's loud." "It's quieter than your sprinkler timer," I shot back. Josh, without even looking at her, added softly, "It has a camera for driving." She blinked, almost offended that he spoke. "Well, it's disruptive," she snapped. "This is a peaceful community." "He lives here," I replied. "This is his peaceful community, too." Karen folded her arms tighter. "Devices like that can cause injury. You may want to review the HOA bylaws." "Oh, I have," I told her. "Turns out your name comes up more than the word lawn." Her lips tightened. She spun around sharply and stormed back across the street. I called after her, "Have a nice day, Karen." She didn't wave back. That night I found a letter in our mailbox. Official-looking HOA letterhead, stamped, folded perfectly. Inside, notice of disturbance. Your property has been observed operating a mechanical device deemed disruptive to community peace. Attached was a $75 fine and a warning. Continued noncompliance could result in legal escalation. I showed it to Josh. He read it slowly, confusion clouding his face. "What did I do wrong?" he asked. "You built something amazing," I said. "Karen doesn't know how to do that." He nodded quietly. "Should I stop?" "Nope," I told him. "You're going to build it again." And he did, but Karen wasn't done. The next afternoon, she showed up again, this time louder. "Your son's car was seen near several driveways," she announced, her voice carrying. "Some residents believe it's recording them." "It's not," I said. "The camera's disabled." "Well, how would we know that?" she demanded. "You could ask," I replied. Karen didn't like that answer. She folded her arms tighter. "I'm reporting this to the board. He's violating safety expectations." "He's 14, Karen." "And he's a liability," she shot back. That was when Josh stepped out of the garage holding a different controller, a newer build. He froze when he saw her. She looked at him like he was malware on her computer. "You're endangering people," she said, as if his existence was a threat. Josh stood still, silent. I stepped closer. "We're done here," I told her. "You'll hear from us," she snapped before storming off. That night, Josh didn't tinker. He didn't laugh. He sat in the garage, staring at his charging station like it had betrayed him. I stood at the window, coffee cooling in my hands, and made a decision. The next time she crossed a line, I wouldn't be quiet. The line came sooner than I thought. The following day, Josh's car vanished. One moment it was charging. The next it was gone. We searched the porch, the street, the yard, nothing. Then I saw it. On the HOA message board, a photo, Josh's car, smashed, lying in Karen's yard. The caption read, "Unapproved surveillance device found on private property. Disabled for safety." Josh stood behind me, jaw tight. "Do I report it?" he asked. "You let me handle it," I said. And I did. I marched across the street, knocked on Karen's door like I had a warrant. She opened it, smirking. "Here to harass me again." "You stole my son's property." I neutralized a threat. "He's 14. The car had no camera." "That's what they all say," she sneered. "Return what's left or I'll press charges," I warned. Her lips curled. "Press all you want." She slammed the door in my face. I stood there for 3 seconds, then walked home. Inside, Josh was already rebuilding. Not because he had to, because he refused not to. And that's when I knew. Karen had no idea who she was up against. Everyone saw the blue and red lights before they heard the sirens. It was Wednesday afternoon. Josh was outside, running a smaller, simpler car he'd built after Karen smashed the last one. No camera, no Wi-Fi, no speed mods, just 4 wheels and a little joy. But then the joy stopped. 2 sharp chirps cut the air. I stepped outside just in time to see a cruiser pulling up, tires crunching against the curb. Josh froze in place, the controller limp in his hands. 2 officers exited the vehicle. And there she was, Karen, standing nearby, phone raised, filming like she just summoned them herself. "Sir," one of the officers began, "we received a report about a juvenile operating suspicious mechanical equipment in a residential neighborhood." My blood went cold. "He's driving an RC car," I said, my voice calm but firm. "There are concerns about privacy violations," the taller officer replied. "There's no camera," I told him. "He was seen outside multiple homes." "He lives here," I shot back. Josh still hadn't moved. His fingers twitched against the controller, but his eyes were locked on the flashing lights. He didn't speak, didn't blink. He looked like he'd been turned into a statue. I stepped between him and the officers. "Before you go any further," I said, steady, level, "you should know something." The taller officer tilted his head. "What's that?" I nodded toward Josh. "That boy is my son." Then I looked him dead in the eye. "And I'm the district attorney." The words hung heavy. The radios went quiet. The shorter officer shifted his stance. Karen's phone dipped slightly, her smugness cracking like glass. But if she thought that was the end, she had no idea what was coming next. Because she didn't just pick a fight with a boy and his toy. She picked a fight with me. The very next weekend was the HOA family day. Hot dogs, balloons, a bounce house sagging under too many sneakers, the kind of fake smile event that tried to convince people their $400 monthly dues were worth it. Josh had asked softly if we could go. He wanted to fly something, not film, just fly. It was the first time since everything that he'd asked to do something social. My gut twisted, but I nodded. "Yeah," I said, "let's go." Josh had built a stripped-down quadcopter. No camera, no GPS, just manual controls and a stabilizer. It wasn't designed for surveillance. It wasn't even designed for speed. It was designed for joy. Karen wouldn't care, but I prayed she wouldn't show up. Of course she did. She arrived like she owned the land. Same visor, same smug posture, same clipboard. Only this time she smiled. And that worried me more than anything. Karen never smiled unless she was about to gut someone in front of witnesses. I spotted her whispering to the event coordinator, pointing toward Josh, then toward the sky. Josh had just started flying. We picked a quiet corner of the park away from the booths. His hands moved across the controller like a pianist. Battery at 93%. Rotor sync clear, wind variable but manageable. The drone lifted, smooth and graceful. And then, Karen's voice exploded across the field through a portable PA system she'd somehow gotten her hands on. "That is a violation," she screamed, finger stabbing the sky. Every head turned. The DJ fumbled the volume knob. Josh froze. The drone wobbled in the air, hovering in place. "This is exactly what I warned about," Karen shouted, packing like she was leading a rally. "Unauthorized aerial devices, surveillance, endangerment. This child is using military-grade tech." A ripple of laughter ran through the crowd. Someone snorted. Karen spun around, seething. "This is not funny." I stepped forward. "I'm not laughing. I'm watching my son fly a glorified plastic butterfly." "He has a history," she hissed. "Ask the cops." And right on cue, 2 officers strolled up from the parking lot. She waved them over like backup at a mall riot. "There," she said, pointing. "That's the boy, that's the machine. I've reported him twice." Josh's hands trembled as he lowered the drone. It landed gently in the grass. The younger officer crouched, his tone soft. "Hey, buddy, can we ask you a couple questions?" Josh nodded once tight. "We're happy to cooperate," I said quickly. "But let me be clear, this drone has no camera, no GPS, and it was operated within event guidelines." "You don't get to define the guidelines," Karen barked. "I helped write them." I glanced at her. "Remember, Karen, DA still applies." The officer raised his hand, calm. "We're not here to escalate, just following up." He turned back to Josh. "Were you recording anything?" Josh shook his head. "Did you fly it over anyone's house?" "No. Near the playground." "I stayed by the tree line," Josh whispered. "You know how some folks might misinterpret this, right?" Josh's face crumpled for a second, then he nodded. "Yeah." That's when the older officer changed everything. He walked past us straight to Karen. His voice dropped low but sharp. "Ma'am, we've looked into your complaints. None of them held up. If there's a real threat, we'll act. But right now, you're creating more of a disruption than the kid." Karen gasped like he'd slapped her. "I represent this community," she snapped. "Right now," he said evenly, "this community is watching you make a scene." I turned, and that's when I noticed it. The crowd not just watching, filming, phones raised high. Karen stormed off, muttering about lawsuits and conspiracies. Josh powered down his drone, his shoulders shaking. I knelt beside him. "You good?" He shrugged. "I didn't crash." I smiled, better than most pilots can say. When we got home, there was an envelope waiting in the mailbox, addressed not to me, but to Josh. 14 years old, no return address, just HOA letterhead. Inside, a formal notice declaring him restricted from all HOA property until further review. The green, the pool, the sidewalks. They were exiling a child from his own neighborhood. I didn't say a word. I just took a photo and posted it to the HOA message board. No caption, no commentary, just the envelope. It went viral in under 3 hours. By sunset, the messages started pouring in. I got one last year, thought I was the only one. She threatened me over sidewalk chalk. She said my garden was visually aggressive. She made me cry. Screenshots flooded in. Petty fines, threats, legal action over nothing. Karen hadn't just targeted Josh, she'd targeted everyone, and now, finally, the dam was cracking. One woman posted a spreadsheet. A document titled Karen's Fines, 2020 present, sorted by offense. Total penalties, $31,000 over 3 years, 82% of them issued without a board vote, and nearly every single one signed by the same name. Karen. That night I didn't get angry, I got organized. Because if Karen wanted a war, she had just declared it on the wrong man. They thought silence would protect them. That's how the HOA board responded after my first move, silence. No answers, no accountability, no explanations. But silence doesn't protect you when the truth is already spreading. That night while Josh rebuilt in the garage, I sat at the kitchen table with a pot of coffee, the HOA charter, and a folder I titled Forest Glen Internal Review. I printed Josh's exile letter, then added screenshots of every message, every fine, every tear-stained story that had come pouring in. By midnight, I had over 40 entries, 40 families, 40 victims, and one goal: burn the whole rotten system down. Legally. Karen thought the neighborhood was hers, but she forgot who she was fighting. I wasn't just a father, I was a prosecutor. And I knew exactly how to build a case. First move, paper. I filed 3 binding requests under the HOA's own bylaws, a complete breakdown of compliance spending for the last 3 years, a list of every resident fined or cited, a disclosure of all vendor payments over $500. I posted the requests publicly on the message board, citing the clauses by heart. And then I waited. No response. So I posted again, this time with one sentence. Failure to respond within 7 business days constitutes grounds for an independent audit and board recall. Still silence. But not from the residents. The first message came from a woman 2 streets over. She said Karen fined her $200 for visual disarray. Her crime? A decorative flagpole. Then a man from the corner lot, $300 for unapproved fence hue. His fence was white. By the end of the night, my spreadsheet had 27 names. By midnight, 41, every violation tied back to the same person, every citation signed by Karen, and over 80% of them issued without a vote. Illegal. Some stories were absurd. A retired veteran fined for flying the American flag at the wrong angle. A single mom penalized because her kid drew sidewalk chalk near the curb. A young couple charged a $500 reinspection fee because their mailbox wasn't aesthetically synchronized. They paid because they were scared, because Karen made them scared. And then I read the message that broke me. I honestly thought I was crazy, a woman wrote. Like maybe I really was violating something, but now I think she just wanted to punish people who didn't bend. I printed that line and taped it to the inside of my briefcase. My motivation. By the time the sun rose, I had built a database of victims. But evidence alone wasn't enough. I needed proof of theft. And that proof came faster than I expected. Buried in old HOA records, I found vendor checks, payments to a company called Evergreen Property Solutions. No physical office, just a P.O. box. And the owner, Karen's cousin. The best part? The payouts came after the HOA had already voted to restrict third-party contracts. She wasn't just power-hungry, she was stealing. And she left her signature all over it. I submitted everything as part of a formal fraud complaint to the County Housing Commission. Then I waited again. This time I wasn't alone. When word spread, neighbors stopped hiding. We held an unofficial resident meeting in the community center. 37 people showed up. No microphones, no podiums, just tables, papers, and truth. I handed out packets labeled Forest Glen HOA, Unlawful Conduct Summary. Inside were copies of fines, checks, vendor records, every shred of evidence I had. The room was silent as they flipped through page after page. Karen's handwriting, Karen's signatures, Karen's lies. A father stood clutching the packet. She fined me for my son's bumper sticker, he said. I paid it. I thought if I didn't, she'd come after us harder. The room went quiet again, heavy, angry. I didn't say much. I didn't have to. Karen's own paperwork was doing the talking now. But even then, I knew something she didn't. Cornered people don't always surrender. Sometimes they strike back. The next day it happened. Josh had walked to the corner store for a soda. Middle of the afternoon, broad daylight, and that's where Karen pulled up. She parked diagonally, blocking his path. She didn't touch him, but she didn't have to. She got out, phone in hand, filming like always. You think your little lawyer daddy can protect you, she sneered. You don't belong here, none of you do. You think you're smarter than me? Think again. Josh stood still, silent, but he was filming too. When he got home, he showed me the video. My hands shook as I watched it. That's when I made another decision. Filing charges wasn't an option. It was a responsibility. Harassing a minor isn't just wrong, it's criminal, especially when it's part of a pattern. I handed the video to the sheriff, along with the letters, the fines, the audit findings. The audit had just come back, and the results were worse than I'd imagined. $42,618 in unaccounted funds. 19 checks made out to shell companies. 3 of them routed to accounts linked to Karen's family. Everyone signed without full board approval. The deputy asked me one question. Do you want this handled quietly? I looked him in the eye. No, I said, I want it handled correctly. Karen thought she'd broken my son, but she hadn't. She hardened him. And now every fake fine, every lie, every stolen dollar wasn't just HOA politics. It was evidence. And the next time a cruiser rolled up our street, it wouldn't be for my house. It would be for hers. The manila envelope was too thick. I opened it like it was a live wire, careful, slow. Inside were the official audit results. Itemized, annotated, signed. I didn't need to read far. On the second page, one number froze my pulse. 42,618.57. That was how much Karen had siphoned from this neighborhood. But the receipts told a deeper story. A story of greed, of theft, of signatures she thought no one would ever question. I didn't smile when I read it. I didn't need to. This wasn't victory. This was just the opening argument. Clause 437 of the Forest Glen Charter gave me the authority to call an emergency HOA meeting. Public, on the record. Karen couldn't delay it. She couldn't block it. She couldn't hide. This time, I wasn't walking in alone. The room was suffocating. Folding chairs scraped against the tile. Neighbors stood shoulder to shoulder, phones raised, cameras rolling. They weren't just attending. They were watching history. Karen walked in late, of course. 10 minutes behind, wearing white like she was headed to a purity pageant, clipboard in hand. Her husband trailing behind her, eyes downcast, lips tight. I stepped to the front. No preamble, no build-up, just truth. This is the result of a 6-week forensic audit into HOA funds, I said, holding up the packet. Over $42,000 gone. Click first slide on the projector. A scanned check, $1,127 for safety uniforms. Vendor, a shop owned by Karen's niece. Click $2,340 for community pet protection, paid directly to Karen. Description, K9 security readiness. Click $4,000 for event consultation. Vendor, Evergreen Property Solutions, a shell company owned by her cousin. People shifted in their seats. Phones zoomed in. I wasn't finished. 80% of these transactions, I continued, were signed off by one person. Click Karen's signature, again and again and again. Every slide another signature, another theft, another betrayal. And then the first voice spoke up. Not mine. A woman near the back, arms folded tight. She fined me for having a garden gnome, she said. $50, said it disrupted the visual flow of the street. Heads turned. Another voice rose. She made me repaint my shutters. A third, she yelled at my daughter for drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. And then quiet, a man's voice trembling. She fined me for my son's wheelchair ramp. The air left the room. You could hear hearts beating. Karen stood suddenly. I deserve to respond, she snapped. Someone booed, quiet but loud enough. The board hesitated, then nodded. Karen marched to the front, grabbed the mic like it was a weapon. All of you, she spat, acting like I'm the villain. I protected this neighborhood. I enforced the rules no one else had the guts to. She jabbed her finger toward the crowd. You want lawn flamingos, trash bins in view, ratty fences. Without me, that's what this place becomes. I tilted my head, click. The next slide appeared. $3,900 in vendor checks made out to Mark Linwood, the HOA's property manager. This man, I said, stepping closer, was supposed to oversee your spending. Click another document. Turns out he's on the board of Evergreen. He signed off on the same checks you did. Karen blinked. For the first time, she hesitated, because now it wasn't just about her. It was about everyone she pulled into her empire. This isn't mismanagement, I told the room. This was a system built to silence you, to fine you, to steal from you. Someone in the audience shouted. She made me pay $300 because my kid left a bike in the driveway. Another, she threatened me with eviction if I didn't replace my mailbox. The room snapped, voices collided, a storm of anger, of receipts, of stories. Karen paled, tried to speak, but no one was listening anymore. And that's when the deputies walked in. Right on cue. They didn't shout, they didn't announce. They just stood at the door waiting. Karen saw them. She scanned the room, searching for allies. For the first time, she realized she had none. She dropped her clipboard. "This is a setup," she hissed. "You're doing this because I embarrassed your freak son." Dead silence. Then from the back, a voice cut through. "You embarrassed yourself." The deputies stepped forward, calm, steady, final. "Karen Mayers," one said, "you are under arrest for misappropriation of funds, falsifying records, and harassment of a minor." They let it hang, let the weight of the words fill the room, and then click, the cuffs locked. Phones captured the sound from every angle. Karen twisted, eyes wild. "This isn't over," she snarled at me. "You think this makes you a hero?" I looked at her, cold, steady. "No, it makes you accountable." Her husband followed silently, head down, shame dripping off his shoulders. The door closed. For a second there was nothing, no sound, no movement, just a room full of people who had been afraid for too long. Then the applause started, small at first, then louder, then thunder. And across town, on his phone, Josh watched it all unfold on a live stream. He texted me one word. Boom. Everyone thought it was over. Karen was gone, removed from the board, cuffed in front of her kingdom. Evergreen Property Solutions dismantled. 2 other board members resigned. Residents were refunded every illegal fine, every phantom fee. The neighborhood sighed like a body finally exhaling. Josh flew again, at the park, in the driveway, sometimes over the cul-de-sac. This time neighbors didn't whisper, they waved, they smiled. One even dropped off cookies. He accepted them awkwardly, like he'd forgotten people could be kind. For the first time in months, silence didn't feel like a threat. It felt like freedom. But peace has a way of lulling you, making you believe the storm is gone, until you see the clouds again. And for me, the storm returned in the form of a plain manila envelope, delivered to my office. No return address. Inside, a flash drive and a single page typed in block letters. Compliance escalation, level 2. I slid the flash drive into my laptop. 7 folders appeared, 7 neighborhoods, different counties, different boards, same scams, same fines, same signatures. And the deeper I looked, the more my stomach twisted. Some of them worse. Children exiled from playgrounds. Families fined thousands for imaginary violations. Elderly residents threatened with foreclosure over mailbox paint. Karen wasn't the disease, she was just a symptom. The rot wasn't local, it was systemic. And by taking her down, I'd tripped a wire. Josh didn't know yet. He was in the garage soldering a new drone motor with surgeon's precision. Not a camera in sight, no recording devices, just focus, just control. He wasn't rebuilding for survival anymore. He was preparing for something else. When I leaned against the doorframe and asked, "You really want to keep building?" He didn't even look up. "I'm not scared of her anymore," he said, then almost too soft to hear. "She should be scared of me." I realized then my son wasn't broken, he wasn't fragile, he wasn't a liability. Karen hadn't destroyed him, she forged him. That night I went into full prosecutor mode. Legal pad, laptop, original HOA charter, coffee that tasted like gasoline, spite in my veins. Because if Karen wanted a war, she'd only started a skirmish. And I was about to burn down the whole system. My first move was paper, again. I filed 3 more requests, this time countywide. A breakdown of HOA compliance enforcement spending. A list of all residents fined in the last 5 years. Public disclosure of all vendor payments. When no one answered, I filed again, and again, and then I posted it all online, citing the law clause by clause. People messaged me. A mother said she'd been fined $150 for excessive toy clutter in her yard. The clutter, her child's plastic slide. A veteran was fined for flying a flag larger than regulation size. He measured it. It was. A newlywed couple charged $500 because their mailbox was not synchronized with the neighborhood aesthetic. Every story, every citation, every check, it all tied back to the same scam. HOA boards weaponized fear, and behind them, shadow companies like Evergreen collected the cash. The scale was massive. And I wasn't just collecting stories anymore. I was building a case. By midnight, my spreadsheet had over 60 names. By dawn, 90. By the end of the week, more than 100. Josh watched me from the garage, quiet but curious. I didn't hide it from him. He had lived this nightmare too. "Why are you still doing this?" he asked one night. I looked at him, at the boy who had been zip-tied on his own driveway for playing with a toy car. At the boy who had been exiled from sidewalks for daring to build. "Because you're not the only one," I said, "and if I stop now, they win everywhere." He didn't respond. He just picked up his soldering iron and went back to work. That weekend, I hosted another meeting, not secret, just off the books. Word spread like fire, 37 the first time, this time over 70. We filled the community center, tables stacked with evidence packets, screenshots, letters, canceled checks. And the moment people saw their own stories reflected in someone else's, the fear broke. "I thought I was the only one," a mother said, holding up her packet. "I thought maybe I was crazy," another admitted. "No," I told them, "you weren't crazy, you were targeted." The anger turned into something else, unity. But cornered people don't always crumble. Sometimes they bite. And Karen wasn't gone yet. She slithered emails, accusations, claims of political retaliation, conspiracies about me, the county, even big lawn care. She said she'd been set up, that this was personal vengeance, that I had manipulated the system to destroy her. No one listened, not anymore. But I knew she wasn't finished. And I was right. Because the next time a cruiser rolled down our street, it didn't stop in front of my house. It stopped in front of hers. Karen didn't vanish after the arrest. She slithered. Emails, accusations, whisper campaigns, claims of political retaliation, conspiracies about me, the county, even something she called big lawn care. She painted herself as the victim, a misunderstood enforcer just doing her job. But what Karen never understood is this: once people see the truth, they don't unsee it. And when the time came to face that truth in court, she walked in like she was still the queen. Josh asked to come. I didn't push him, but I didn't stop him either. He sat beside me in a clean hoodie, a little drone controller tucked in his pocket, not to fly anything, just to hold, a reminder of who he was. Karen entered through the side door. No clipboard, no white outfit, no crowd to perform for, just stiff posture and a desperate attorney 2 steps behind her. She didn't look at us. She stared straight ahead, like if she ignored the room hard enough, it would stop being real. The judge didn't give her a stage. He read the charges cold. Fraud, falsification of documents, harassment of a minor. Karen's lawyer jumped up, spinning a tale about emotional stress, misunderstood authority, volunteer burnout. The kind of defense that tries to turn cruelty into confusion. The judge shut it down fast. His voice was sharp, final. "You didn't enforce standards," he said. "You enforced fear, and you profited from it." Karen flinched, just slightly, but enough. Then the judge looked past her to Josh. "Young man," he said, "do you wish to speak?" The room froze. Even I held my breath. Josh stood, no pause, no drama, just words that cut sharper than anything I could have written. She made me feel like I didn't belong in my own neighborhood. That was it, no speech, no tears, just truth. The judge nodded, entered into record. Karen's eyes flicked toward him for the first time, and for the first time she looked afraid. Her plea wasn't not guilty. It wasn't even guilty. It was no contest, not innocence, not accountability, just cornered. The sentence was light, restitution, a permanent ban from HOA boards, a public apology to the community. But sentences aren't the same as consequences. Because Karen didn't walk out a leader, she walked out irrelevant. And waiting outside, neighbors, news crews, phones raised high, signs in hand. One read, $42,000 for dog treats and drama. Nah. Karen ducked into a black car like it was a getaway vehicle. Josh leaned closer. Want me to fly one over her, for old time's sake? I shook my head, let her disappear on her own. But I knew something. People like Karen don't disappear. They hide, they plot, they look for shadows to crawl back into. And there were plenty of shadows. Because when I got home that night, another envelope was waiting. No return address. Just a folder inside marked with the same phrase I'd seen before, compliance escalation, level 2. This wasn't just Karen. It wasn't just Forest Glen. Inside the folder were documents from 7 other neighborhoods, 7 different counties, same tricks, same scams, same shell companies, some even worse. And then came the line that made my blood run cold. Your case tripped a system-wide flag. Someone else was watching, not just neighbors, not just boards, someone higher. The next day, a black sedan pulled up outside our house. Tinted windows, no plates. A man in a gray suit stepped out, briefcase in hand. He didn't knock, he just waited. When I stepped out to meet him, he opened the case and slid a folder across the porch table. Recovered from a central HOA server, he said. Encrypted, buried deep. You cracked something bigger than Karen. We're forming a task force. We'd like your help. I didn't answer right away. I looked past him. Josh was in the driveway, silhouetted by the sunset drone humming steady above him like a bird that belonged in the sky. Because he did. And so did I. Karen thought she was the war. She was just the warm-up. The real rot wasn't gone. It was underneath. And if they thought I'd stop now, they didn't know me. I don't stop when things get peaceful. I stop when they get clean. After Karen was gone, the silence was strange. For the first time in months, no blinds cracked open when I walked outside. No whispers at the mailbox. No kids hiding their chalk drawings. Even Muffin, the yappy dog 3 doors down, stopped barking like she had something to prove. It felt like the whole neighborhood had finally exhaled. Josh didn't make an announcement. He didn't celebrate. He just rolled up the garage door one afternoon and the workbench was alive again. Soldering irons, 3D prints, wires everywhere. He wasn't building in secret anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was sharing. And the neighborhood noticed. 2 weeks later, an invitation showed up in our mailbox. Forest Glen Family Day. The same event Karen tried to ruin. Only this time they wanted Josh to headline it. Not just allowed, wanted. When the day came, Josh stood in the middle of the green with 5 drones lined up like soldiers. He didn't give a speech. He didn't need to. He launched them one by one. They danced in the air, weaving patterns, crossing paths, spiraling like fireworks without fire. Phones rose, people clapped, not for a miracle, for a kid who had finally been seen. When it ended, a little girl tugged his sleeve. Can you teach me? Josh didn't hesitate. Garage is open after school, he said. Just like that, his world widened. So did everyone else. That week, I found a sticky note in our mailbox, a sketch of Josh's drone. Underneath, it read, "Thanks for reminding us who we are." But peace never lasts long. A black sedan rolled up again. Same tinted windows, same silent approach. A man in a gray suit stepped out, folder in hand. You started something, he said. We found 7 more neighborhoods, same fraud, same fear, you want in. I didn't answer right away. I looked past him. Josh was in the cul-de-sac, flying a hawk-shaped drone, steady and strong. Later that night, Josh showed me something. He tapped his controller and the drone hovered. Then it played a warped audio loop. "You don't know who I am." Karen's voice, distorted, ghostly. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my drink. Josh just smirked. Some memories deserved a soundtrack. We didn't need sirens anymore. We had silence. And a hum in the sky. The neighborhood changed in small ways first. The little girl chalked stars again, this time in front of Karen's old house. Someone left a cactus on every mailbox, an inside joke, a tribute. The man who once avoided eye contact waved now without fear. It wasn't speeches or resolutions that rebuilt the community. It was absence. The absence of fines, the absence of threats, the absence of fear. But every absence leaves space. And space is where new battles begin. One night while I sat on the porch, sipping coffee gone cold, Josh asked me something I wasn't ready for. "Are you gonna stop?" "Stop what?" "Fighting them." I looked at him, the boy who had once been zip-tied on his own driveway, now commanding drones in the sky like they belonged there. The boy who had been exiled from sidewalks, now invited to headline community events. "No," I said finally, "not until it's clean." Josh nodded. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. He understood. Because somewhere out there, another kid was being told they didn't belong. Another family was paying fines for crimes that didn't exist. Another Karen was smiling behind a clipboard. And this time, they weren't going to see it coming. Some stories end with applause. Ours ended with a black sedan. The neighborhood thought the war was over. No fines in the mailbox. No threats taped to the door. Kids chalked sidewalks without fear, laughter echoing where whispers once lived. People waved, smiled, even lingered on porches past sundown. It was ordinary, and after everything, ordinary felt miraculous. But ordinary doesn't last. Not when you've pulled the mask off a monster and found there are more faces underneath. That sedan pulled up at twilight. Same tinted windows, same silence. This time I didn't stand. I stayed seated on the porch, coffee cooling in my hands. The man in the gray suit walked up the steps like he'd been here before. He didn't waste words. Just opened his briefcase, slid a folder across the table. "Compliance escalation, level 2. This was recovered from a central HOA server," he said. "Encrypted, hidden deep, your case tripped a system-wide flag." I opened the folder. 7 neighborhoods, different counties, same fines, same scams, same signatures, some worse. I didn't speak. "You've seen what one Karen can do," he continued. "Now imagine dozens, same playbook, same shell companies. We're forming a task force. We'd like your help." I looked past him. Josh was in the cul-de-sac, silhouetted against the sunset. His drone hovered above him, wings glinting gold. A shadow bird that belonged to the sky. He wasn't broken anymore. He wasn't hiding. He was building, flying, teaching, free. And I knew then this wasn't about one neighborhood, or one bully, or one fraud. This was about every kid who'd been told they didn't belong. Every family fined into silence. Every community poisoned by fear disguised as order. Karen was just the opening act. The real show was about to begin. Weeks later, Forest Glen held another family day. The first one without Karen. No fines. No speeches about rules. Just kids running, parents laughing, balloons floating on a breeze that didn't feel heavy anymore. And Josh, he didn't just fly his drones. He taught. 5 kids at his side, controllers in their hands, eyes wide as the machines lifted into the sky. Their laughter rose above the rooftops. When it ended, a father I'd never spoken to shook my hand. "Thanks for reminding us who we are," he said quietly. But as the crowd dispersed, as neighbors folded chairs and kids licked the last of the popsicles, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Later that night, as Josh tinkered in the garage, I found a note slipped into our mailbox. No return address, no signature, just one line. "Level 3 is already moving." I stood there under the porch light, the paper trembling in my hand. Karen was gone, but her blueprint was. And the people behind her, They weren't clipboard bullies. They wore suits, badges. They didn't find kids for chalk. They swallowed entire communities whole. I folded the note, slid it into my briefcase beside the audit, the letters, the screenshots. Evidence of one war that was really just the prologue. Josh poked his head out from the garage, smudged with grease, holding up a tiny prototype drone. "Look," he said, grinning. "This one barks at HOA letters." I laughed, maybe harder than I should have, because sometimes survival sounds like humor. I watched him go back inside, soldering iron glowing, his hands steady. Karen thought she'd broken him. But what she never understood was that resilience doesn't shatter, it reforges. And now she wasn't the cautionary tale, she was the warning shot. The next time they came, whoever they were, it wouldn't be one boy with a toy car and his dad on a porch. It would be a neighborhood, a city, a system of people who'd finally had enough. I looked up at the cul-de-sac, the quiet street, the hum of a drone slicing through twilight. "I don't stop when things get peaceful," I whispered to no one in particular. "I stop when they get clean." And in that moment, I realized something chilling. We weren't anywhere near clean. We were just getting started. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.